purchase today.
Folks, we're back and better than ever.
Your show have always appeared to be a show that is focused on going to the cause or looking to the cause.
We hardly ever talk about the white-collar crime, though. We always talk about the ones that involve more as physical violence against individuals.
The citizens will only measure transmission when water starts to flow through their taps.
The Constitution doesn't talk about local election.
Contract mafia is responsible for looting the country, and they own and operate these politicians.
So if you are running a country and you can't say nothing as a prime minister, please take up your bag and go.
It is not comparative to the murder figures, but it is in fact very high.
I believe he's protecting certain individuals.
Join me, Dr. Nalini Kokram, on What's Up Doc, where we discuss all your burning questions concerning health.
Trinidad and Tobago is among one of the highest risk group of patients that develop this form of genetic breast cancer.
What I'd like to take home from a short interview like this, screening. You must screen.
Because it's silent.
It's silent.
Yeah.
And because it's silent, you don't know it's there.
What's Up Doc, every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
WESN.
This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. Thanks for staying with us here at WESN. Well, let's just tell you this. We're talking about an article in the Guardian newspaper a couple of days ago, headlined Beijing Plus 30 and CSW 69. We tell you what it is about: advancing the women's rights, the rights of women in the Caribbean and Tobago. That's the subheadline. We will get to that specificity in a moment. But our guest on this edition of the program, Grace Tama, a long-working person in this field and in other fields in the business in Trinidad and Tobago. She's been one of the pioneers pushing this objective for increasing rights of women in the Caribbean. Let's just say this to you. As the world marks International Women's Day 2025, the global community also reflects on the 30th anniversary of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, that's called Beijing Plus 30, adopted in 1995 at the 4th World Conference on Women. This landmark agreement set the stage for gender equality and women's empowerment worldwide. From March 10th to the 21st, 2025, the 69th Commission of the Status of Women will convene at the United Nations headquarters in New York to assess progress and challenges in implementing the Beijing Declaration. For Caribbean women, and especially the women of Tobago, these discussions hold significant relevance as they continue to strive for gender equity, economic inclusion, and political representation. The Commission on the Status of Women is the principal global policy-making body dedicated to gender equality and the advancement of women's rights. Each year, the CSW brings together government representatives, civil society organizations, and experts to evaluate progress and set new targets for women's empowerment. The Beijing Declaration and the Platform for Action outline 12 critical areas of concern, including poverty, education, health, violence against women, economic partnership, participation, and leadership. As CSW 69 coincides with Beijing Plus 30 states, including those in the Caribbean, have been called to conduct national review assessments and assessing the progress and obstacles in fulfilling its commitments made in 1995. Well, where have we gotten after 30 years? Grace Talma, like I said, somebody who's been with this even from the beginning, has agreed to join us. We expect to be joined also by Terry Dale Innes, another advocate who is in fact in New York, having been attending meetings concerning that over the last couple of days. We expect that she will join us. Ms. Talma, well, thank you very much for agreeing to join us on the topic.
Thank you very much, Mr. Johnson, and it's a pleasure to be here and to try to answer some of these questions. It's been 30 years since I attended the Beijing conference, and therefore a lot has happened, and we wish to talk about that this morning, yeah?
Yeah. So let's talk about what you see as things that have happened consequent upon these declarations being made, and later on we'll get to what might have happened, what could have happened, what should have happened that is still...
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, let me say that one, I think we've made tremendous strides in the field of, you know, education particularly. Women have moved fast, very, very quickly into their particular positions. I think we need to say at political leadership, we've seen an improvement in that, and in business. I still think we have a lot more to go, but we have many challenges such as gender-based violence, the question of economic development for women, and in terms of the climate, vulnerability persists. But let me just say that if we look at the decades, the 3 decades, and I speak for Trinidad and Tobago particularly, from 1996 to 2005, we created a human rights unit within the Ministry of the Attorney General to strengthen Trinidad and Tobago's capacity to report to international human rights treaty bodies. Recognition was given by the state party as well to the role played by a number of NGOs and community-based organizations in the country, which have assisted the state in the efforts to eliminate all forms of discrimination against women. In 1986, we had the counting of the Unremunerated Work Act. That was developed. And we've had a comprehensive program on the whole question of combating domestic violence through such initiatives as a 24-hour hotline and some other aspects. We've seen a greater increase in terms of the sensitization of women and men regarding the whole issue of the subject. However, as I said, that was particularly in the first decade, a lot of our work was spent on sensitizing men and women on the issue. As we moved into the second decade, we got the Violence Against Women Sexual Offenses Act. And we continued our work during the second decade, increasing a lot of the aspects of the law involving and helping women, like, for instance, as we moved into the Marriage Act and the things like that, laws like that. We updated the Domestic Violence Act. We also, in that decade later on, we had a gender policy, which has been developed. Of course, it's still to be cabinet approved totally, but nevertheless, it is there. In the police service, we have had a gender-based violence unit within that service, and a policy on sexual harassment in the workplace also came up. I would say that we've had a number of improvements, as I said earlier, of women in the political arena. For instance, in Trinidad and Tobago, I think we rank almost highest, 31% of seats in the House, 20% in the Senate, and in local government, about 29%. However, one of the issues still is that we don't find that a number of the ministers within, the leadership within the government at that level, even though we do have some ministers, it's still not 50-50%. In terms of education, I would say that we've made great advances at the CSEC and SEA levels, 51% girls and 49% boys. However, if we look at when they move into the workplace, we still have a lot of work to do there. And so I would say that there has been quite a bit of progress particularly in Trinidad and Tobago, and I would say to a larger extent as well to the Caribbean.
Yeah, I'll be talking about women in political leadership roles, and as you say, the report does provide some of the statistics there. The proportion of seats held in Parliament in Trinidad and Tobago in 2023 was 28.6%, and in Jamaica 26.7%. And one argument is that this is the writers here, Ms. Green's position, that this is not sufficient given the number of women who hold places in parliaments around the region. Not reflected in the position. Yes, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
No, I said I agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree with her. I think we need to increase that number. I think even within the political parties themselves, the women in, I don't think we have a whole, not everyone is really on board with the whole feminism and the whole aspect of what we're talking about this morning. And I think a lot of work has to be done in training of our women. I know the network of NGOs, quite some time ago, I was involved in that, where we gave training to women to get into politics. Because after all, we have to get the women to have the aspirations to move into the politics. And I think that also when we get in there, how do we bring others up? And that's a big issue for me. How do we help the other women to come into the positions?
Yeah.
So I'm saying that that is an important factor.
And just as something related to that, or I'm trying to find a means by which to make it related, that you had what started out as probably a possible contest for the leadership of the PNM and the Prime Ministership of Trinidad and Tobago, given the fact that as we speak, the morning after the Prime Minister did his last public interview last evening, and the question as to what happened with the proposed candidacy by
Penny Beckers.
Yeah, Penelope Beckers. Why she bowed out? It seemed. Why do you think? What may have gone on there? Why did she not put up a stronger challenge for the position of Prime Minister in this case?
Well, I think I would want to say that she did very well, 9-11 votes. That was 9-11. But I still say that I go back to myself in 1983 when I ran for mayor, for Australian mayor, and it reminded me of having lost the seat. I just backed it down. And I'm wondering if a lot of our work still has to be done on ourselves to really have the fight to continue on. I think that Penny Beckers is a very, very good candidate. And I don't know if she backed down, but I'm just saying that it may be perceived as that because the fight, maybe they should have had more women to support her within that party. I don't know, but I'm just saying that.
Yeah.
But she is a very good candidate. I mean, she's as good a candidate as the other person.
I'm going on the other side. We did have a female prime minister for 5 years, 2010 to 2015. But the record, at least from what one makes of public comment and discussion, the record is not as exemplary as maybe some people thought it should have been.
And I think that also may have some kind of impact on our perception of how people see women in leadership in the political scene. I'm not sure, but I'm just saying to you that perhaps could have some influence. But I'm just saying that it's going to make it a little harder for us as women to get right to the top. But we have to work at it, and we have to continue the fight. And I'm not sure that all women or many women are comfortable with that fight for feminism and getting forward. Because you still hear the excuse from people saying that, well, you know, we've got to look at whether you've got, how do we measure strength? And that to me is an important factor. She's not strong enough, or you hear people saying that, or she hasn't got the experience, but Penny has the experience. But I'm just saying to you that I think a lot of work has to be done among us women, because even though there is a women's group within the parties, do we really have the consciousness of that? And I think that, again, I come back to training and sensitization of women and helping the younger women to move up. Once you're in there, really, continuing that fight for ensuring that women get to the top.
Yeah, tell me if I'm correct, but in a couple of decades ago, it appears that the women's arm of the PNM was much more strong and vibrant than it is now. You're recalling people like Elmina Clark Allen, Muriel Donovan McDavidson, Ms. Mitchell, and the list goes on, of strong PNM women at that time, a couple of decades ago, but maybe they were too early to be taking over the lead of the party after, well, certainly probably after Chambers, who took over after the death of Dr. Williams. I mean, I remember...
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying that well, just as in the women's movement too, I think those of us who were there in the early days were very strong activists. And I'm not saying that these now are not, but I'm just saying that perhaps one can look at the fact that in the early days, the women really had a great need to get up there. So, but I really feel strongly that we have to keep on with the activism and to ensure that everybody is online and on course with that.
You think
activism?
Yes.
Huh?
Go ahead. You said the activism
needs to be strengthened. It needs to be strengthened a little more because there is, maybe there are different types of influences now, but I'm just saying that the nature of the activism to me in the early days was stronger.
Well, why do you think some people, and this writer has this as one of the issues to be addressed, the question of gender-based violence? She also talks about unequal economic opportunities and climate vulnerability. I'm not sure how you attach climate vulnerability to the issue of women's role and function in society, but certainly gender-based violence. You said that the legislation has been updated.
Yes, but it's getting worse, and that is one of the big challenges, that the whole degree of the extent to which there's gender-based violence is getting worse now. And therefore, there seems to be some problem and challenge in the implementation of the law, right? I heard, I think, our incoming Prime Minister said recently that he was going to ensure that, to try to increase the fines on gender-based violence. But we've got to get to the root of it, because it is a very much something facing us, not only in Trinidad and Tobago, but in the region.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying that there is to me, there's a little problem between the law and the implementation of the law, and really realizing in terms of how do we have to change that behavior in the perpetrators as well as the people who are, how do we help to support the victims some more in terms of the violence?
Yeah.
So there's need to address that. It's very serious, and we have to do it.
Well, just going back to the politics of it for a bit, the piece quotes Dr. Nicole Ameline, a former chair of the UN CEDAW group, speaking to the need for a 50-50 gender parity in political activities and in positions in parliament and government activity. Could it work like that? Should it work like, setting up quotas?
I feel that people have to be qualified, and people have to be, but to just put a woman because we have to have 50-50, unless those women have, in fact, again I say, be sensitized to understanding why they're there, and ensuring that the goals that we're setting for women's development and equality are continued and are realized.
Yeah. But speaking of that, on the question of economic inclusion, for instance, the piece says that women in Tobago and across the region require greater access to financing and business development support to compete in both local and international market. How do you go about
I agree that there is need for greater financing for women in business. We have done quite a bit in Trinidad, and I think that the laws some of the things that are happening also happen for Tobago. I'm not sure that, but I do agree that one of the challenges is that the resources have reduced in terms of a lot of the funding that we would get for certain particular projects. And therefore, I know that that is a challenge. And I would just say that we need to perhaps give some more attention to Tobago in that particular situation. But I'm just suggesting that. But I think that we also have to recognize that there are opportunities that we have as women to make sure that we grasp them.
Yeah. I'm trying to see if I could find a link between the situation, social, political, and economic situation regarding women and their advance to the front and climate resilience, as the piece talks about.
Unless she's in the vulnerability has to do with the fact that women's, well, for instance, the climate change in terms of their housing, in terms of situations like that where they're affected. But I don't see it as only women, I see it as men and women as well.
Yeah.
That climate vulnerability relates to all of us, men, women, girls, and boys.
Yeah. I know of at least one organization which is called the Group for Women Rural Production.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that may be sort of a nod in that direction of getting women involved in agricultural production.
In agriculture and production. But I think that all women and men need to be aware of the climate change problems, and we need to also recognize that in our own behavior as human beings, that we've got to address those issues in our own lives. So, you know, the whole question of what we do as we live, you know, what we do and contribute to the problems of climate, you know, vulnerability. We have to be, and again, I come back to training and education in that sense.
So you believe that you're saying that more attention should be put at training and education. How do you go about doing that? What has to happen?
Well, let's start in the schools, because I mean, I would say that you have to really work at introducing into the schools programs that would help young girls and young boys to understand what is required in terms of their own lives, in terms of their relationships with one another. I'm not sure that we do enough of that kind of training in terms of in our school system. So I think it starts from very, very early. I know for a fact, for instance, that there's a girls' school and there's fighting between girls all the time. There's violence between girls. There's bullying and all of that. And you know, it's not only between girls and boys, but it's also between girls and girls. So I'm saying that we need to address and raise levels of consciousness in terms of that. And the whole question of the aspect of gender and what is it all about, we need to put that into the school system and then move up as we go on. So
Yeah.
I'm saying that we need to have an all-encompassing program of sensitization that continues on.
You think the fighting between girls and girls probably is over boys?
It's amazing. It's not only over boys, but it's over simpler things, you know, that happen. But we have to recognize that also these children are coming out of homes that have issues as well. And so we need to address it. The whole question of bullying and the use of the technology is adding to it, because social media, young people use social media and don't understand, for a lot of times, they don't understand the impact of what they do on social media. And it can affect relationships among each other.
Yeah, 60% of tertiary education graduates in the region are females, yet their participation in formal employment and leadership positions remains, according to this lady, disproportionately low.
Yeah, I think that, but let me just say that to me, in terms of employment, and I have quite a bit of experience in that, I think generally we need to go back and look at planning your career and that sort of thing, because sometimes we tend to stick as women into the same traditional, there's a change happening, but we still have to stay in those traditional jobs. So I'm saying that again, career guidance, understanding how and where to go in terms of your employments, choice of subjects, and so on. So yes, I agree that there is still need for an improvement in that area in terms of employment. Although I'm aware that quite a few women are moving into non-traditional areas like engineering and so on, and are moving on. But I would say that there is a need to develop that.
Yeah, I want to come back to some of the points you made here and I listed, but we're expecting to have with us the lady, in my view, and I suppose you support that, and who sort of has a pinpoint kind of ahead of others in addressing these issues and paying attention to them. That is Terry Dalins, who is in New York now because she's been attending a lot of these meetings having to do with that, consequent upon the meeting called for Beijing plus 30. This piece talks about, this question looks at the issue of economic inclusion, and the piece is saying that women in Tobago and across the region require greater access to financing and business development support to compete in both local and international markets. And that has to be a decision that somebody takes to do that, not so?
Of course, yes, it is. It has to be, and I guess one may have to look at the THA and whether they have programs specifically designed to help to fund women in economic situations. I know we have in Trinidad, and I think some of the things also involve women in Tobago, but I don't have the data on that.
Yeah.
But I do agree that there is need for greater funding to help with women in business, right? But we also have to understand that there are opportunities that we can grasp. And a lot, again, it goes back to the kind of research that we need to do and we need to have done for us, or we need to do to ensure that we have access to these funds.
You think whatever the situation is in Trinidad, it's probably a little more advanced than what it is in Tobago, because the piece continues to make the point about Tobago. Economic inclusion, women in Tobago and across the region require greater access to financing and business development support to compete in both local and international markets.
It may be, since a lot of the businesses are situated here in Trinidad, and perhaps a lot of the opportunities are greater for helping, but I know the Ministry of Trade has done some work in terms of providing funding for people going into business. And therefore, I would want to hope that that also includes women in Tobago.
Yeah, we got to go, but let me just get a quick comment from you. Terry Dale says that part of the issue in Trinidad and Tobago for us specifically is that we have not yet formulated and put out a gender policy.
Yes, and I said that earlier on.
Yeah.
It is, we haven't formulated it properly, and also using it for all sectors of the society so that they understand what the policy is and there is constant reference to it. So I think the time has come for us to really act on this and to make sure that the gender policy now is a policy that can be formally accepted, because that is one of our what's one of the shortcomings, I think. The gender policy, we worked hard on trying to get a gender policy, but it's not fully formalized, and we need to have that done.
All right, Grace Talma, I would say an overall development policy advocate in Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you very much for talking with us.
Thank you very much. Right. Bye.
This has been 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
WESN.
Hi, I'm Claudette, radiographer at the radiology departments at the community hospital. We offer high-quality service with state-of-the-art equipment in X-ray, ultrasound, CT, and mammogram. Come, our friendly staff awaits you.
Give us a call at 235-5479.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collection.